It's rewarding in its own sense dealing with people. How many days are there that are just like, okay, I've got one parent yelling at me and I got another parent praising me up and down, thrilled that I was able to answer a very simple question for them. The most frustrating part of my job and the happiest part of my job. It's why I do what I do. It's the people.
Welcome to the BJU Press Teacher Edition podcast, where Christian educators are encouraged and inspired as we bring you interviews, practical ideas, strategies, and answer your questions about teaching in today's culture. And here's your host, Jenny Copeland.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for making Teacher Edition podcast a part of your day. Let me again remind you to take a minute, go subscribe to the podcast. By the way, if you have friends who aren't listening in, please share the podcast with them. It's so easy. Just go wherever you listen to the podcast and just click that share button. Then you can select your friends, go on your contact list right there, and you can select your friends. And with one click, you can just push that show out to them. Of course, if you listen to us on our website, you can simply just share that website URL with them. You can also find us on social media. We're Teacher Edition Podcast on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok on Teacher Edition Pod. Once again, that is Teacher Edition Pod. By the way, if you're a listener and you would like to watch these interviews, just hop on over to YouTube, and there you can find us at Teacher Edition Podcast. Lastly, I would love it if you would take a minute and leave us a rating, a review, and a comment if you're enjoying the show. It really does help us know what you're enjoying, but it helps others to find the show as well, so take a minute to do that. Today, we have with us Linda DeGroot. So I've had the privilege of interacting with Linda over this past, it's probably several years in a number of different ways. So interestingly enough, Linda is not with us here today because she's a teacher or because she's an administrator. In fact, Linda's ministry is in a school and two schools and is vital to the operations every day of schools. Her vital job is one that is often overlooked. I guess when we point out the heavy lifters in a school, that position might not be pointed out. In fact, her position is one, though, in fact, if it were to disappear, then the entire school would feel that impact for sure. So maybe you've guessed it by now. Linda serves as school office personnel. She's been serving in the office of Bay City Christian School in Green Bay, Wisconsin for almost 30 years. She served the majority of those years as school secretary and most recently transitioned to add registrar to her resume. So she has a bachelor's degree in business administration with a nonprofit emphasis. And interestingly enough, when she accepted the Lord as her Savior in 1992, she just knew that God wanted her to use her skills in a ministry, in a place where she could impact people for the Lord. When a secretarial position came open at Bay City, she jumped at that opportunity. So in addition to her office responsibilities, though, she is also the secretary for the Wisconsin Association of Christian Schools, and she organizes their annual educators conference. And I'm here to tell you, by personal experience, she does a phenomenal job. It is incredibly organized. It's a well-oiled conference. It's really amazing. When she isn't doing her secretarial work, which I wonder when that is, she and her husband really love to try out mini golf courses, and she loves spending time with her family, including those grandkids. So I wanted to bring Linda on the show because a school is not just about the teachers. It's not just about the head of school. There are so many different people, different positions that pour into a ministry of a Christian school. Very few people know what goes on in a school office or what experiences they have throughout their day. So most teachers know that if they send an email or maybe they send a student down to the office, something's going to be done. But other than maybe a quick observation while they're making a copy at the copier in the office, very few really know what goes on in an office or really of the myriad of details that have to be attended to each and every day. And perhaps we could say the myriad of interruptions, maybe myriad of sidetracks that can happen just while someone in the office is trying to accomplish one task. I wonder how often the office personnel and the teachers really take time to get to know each other, to know what they do, to know how they can best support each other. I wonder what school secretaries wish teachers knew about the office. There are many other wonderings, but I thought it would be just so insightful to have a veteran school secretary with us. so she could pull back that curtain a little bit and give us some more insight. So I'm really excited to have Linda today and what she will bring to the table. So Linda, thanks for being willing to be here with us. Welcome to the Teacher Edition podcast.
Thank you for having me. This has been fantastic. I've been looking forward to doing this with you. I thought it was a great opportunity to be able to help you pull back that veil, as you say. So I have a heart and passion for the secretaries in schools. Just because we have everything, we do conferences and everything else for our teachers and for administrators and everything else. But just being able to help those secretaries to learn and to grow as well has been a real burden for me. So
that's great. Okay, so as we get started today, I'd love if you would tell us a little bit about your story. So I briefly mentioned your degrees and I mentioned your interest in impacting for the Lord as you came on in that position. But really, how did you become a school secretary? Was that something you had always been interested in? Tell us a little more about your story.
So you mentioned that I have a degree in business management, human resource emphasis, honestly, a nonprofit emphasis. When I was growing up, I was heavily involved in the Girl Scouts. And by the time I was in high school, I knew I wanted to be a Girl Scout Council executive director. So
wow, you had it planned out.
That's why I went to school for what I went to school for.
Okay.
And then about 6 months after I graduated from college here in Green Bay, my husband and I had been going through some rough stuff, and we started going to Bay City Baptist Church. And about a couple months after we started going there, I got saved, wonderfully, gloriously saved. So, and God just really started working on my heart as to what it was my life was going to need to look like living for Him. And so over the next couple of years, as things developed, Bay City had a school, Christian school, about 50 students at that time. And our membership was only about 100 or so. And we had a part-time secretary, and I really loved her, and it was great. And all of a sudden it was like, I had said something to my husband and had kind of started to think, it's like, I couldn't teach. I'm not a teacher. You don't want me in a classroom. I been there, did that if I had to over my course of my career and everything else. And I really am not meant to teach. But I was like, I could do secretary. Like I love being organized, and I love taking care of things, and I love doing all that background stuff. And so it's like, but our secretary, she's not going anywhere anytime soon or anything like that. And I walked into our church office the one day to pay my tuition bill for my little one who was in kindergarten. And one of our college students was in there, and I was like, the secretary's not here. And I'm like, I'll come back and pay her later. And she's like, no, she took a different job. And I like walked across to the pastor's office, and I was like, okay, well, she left. How come? And he's like, well, that's true. And I said, no, never mind. I just need to know how much. I'm like, and are you really going to hire? And what? And so we just ended up in this real long conversation where he was like, honestly, your name came up, and we were like, I don't know if she could do it. And I was just like, yeah, I really think I can, but let me go home. My husband came home to finding me with our budget spread out everywhere on the floor, going, okay, can we make this work? Knowing how much it would be. I'm like, it's like, we know God will provide, but do I still need to work on the job? And so he came home and he was just like, just do it. Just do it. This is what obviously God has called you to. So went back to pastor the next day, said, I really would like to apply for the job. And took a couple of months just because there was, things to sort out and stuff like that. But started in March of 96 and haven't looked back. So, but started part-time, by the time as we were growing, went to full-time, went to hiring other secretaries, went to, okay, here we go. And about 10 years ago, we ended up with a staff of full-time church secretary, full-time finance secretary who takes care of church and school finances, and then a full-time school secretary, which was me. And then a couple of years after, as that was happening and everything, the Wisconsin Association of Christian Schools, our pastor became the executive director. And with it, they were like, can Linda be the secretary? Because I'd kind of been working with the secretaries who had been over the last few years, helping them get things going. And I was like, absolutely, I would love to do that. So I was doing full-time school secretary, part-time with the association and everything else. And just doing that for a few years. And then it was just bad. It got to be a little bit much kind of thing, being full-time and part-time somewhere and everything. So we kept back to part-time at the school, hired another part-time school secretary, and the two of us shared that job for a while. And now we're to a full-time school secretary, as well as we're almost 300 students now. So it was necessity at this point. So full-time school secretary, and my position as part-time has really transferred to that registrar role. I take care of all the student records, their folders, their information, their just everything that has to go with a student to make sure that their records with us are correct. And then projects throughout the year. So it's just, there's always different things to have to do that the school secretary who really, she takes care of everything for the teachers and for the student, like the day in, day out. She's the frontline person now. But it's been a wonderful transition for us and everything else. And so we have a good team there and everything. So my job has like changed a lot in the last 30 years and everything. So
Yeah, that is quite the journey. I love that story. That's excellent. Okay, so it may be easy for a teacher to define his or her role and, their purpose in a school, and even an administrator really in leading but okay, I'm guessing there are not many in office positions who have really taken the time or maybe even given much thought, maybe they don't have time, to defining their role or their purpose. What do you see as your role? I mean, I guess you could say both secretary and registrar in supporting the Christian school. How would you define that?
Yeah. Okay. Actually, that question answers itself. So support, as it's like in supporting them. That's what the role of the school secretary and our office personnel really is to just support the administrators, support the teachers. For the administrators, it looks like protecting and from sales calls and protecting from parents who just want to ask a simple question that I can answer for them, or it's like, or for the teachers, it might mean doing some of the things like planning a field trip for them, or just getting their copies made, or doing different little things that is like, hey, there's been a student up, and it's like, hey, can you make 10 copies for me? Well, yeah, of course we can do that. And so it just really is that role of supporting them and everything. So, it's the families communicating information, answering questions for them. For the students, it's supporting them in the roles of like, ooh, we came in from recess and we scraped our knee. Okay, well, let's get you cleaned up and band-aided. And that encouraging them too. So they come up to the window and they want to call mom because they're having a bad day or things like that. And it's like, okay, well, what's going on and what's happening, and what can I, can I do? And, okay, let me give you a hug. So it's a great atmosphere to be like that and everything. So that's my role kind of thing. My purpose. I just gave a talk here at our last educators conference. I'm always trying to do something for our secretaries at our conferences. And, we talked a lot about what our purpose is, in that position as the school secretary and everything else. And Deuteronomy 10:12 says, "And now, Israel, what doth the Lord thy God require of thee, but to fear the Lord thy God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul." So it's like we're to fear and glorify God, walk in his ways, love him, and then serve others, which is really what the school secretary is making sure everybody's getting supported and served in the way they need to be served and everything. So not about me. In fact, our school had, not slogan, but theme last year was all about God, not about me. And so it was a good year of being reminded that it's all about God. Whatever I'm doing, it's all about him. So that's kind of when I look at my role and my purpose. It's like I have a super long 1.5-page list of all of the job duties of the secretary. Okay. From pulling
I'm sure it's more than a page and a half.
Okay. Right. So from pulling teeth and filing guru and, it's forever long kind of thing. It's everything. It's like cleaning up after that sick child, or working on, certain projects, or like creating a new document, or whatever it is. It's like totally just, it can be very random at times as to how do I need to support the administrator or the teachers or things like that. So, that's where I'm at. So
Okay, so following along those same lines, really exactly, we can often work with people but not really know what they do. And I think the Christian school is no exception there. As I mentioned in the introduction, I think a lot of teachers, especially, don't know what goes on, in the office every day, in and out. I mean, every day is a little different, but in general. So, what would you say is the most challenging thing in a school office? You told us about your list. So, let's see if we can narrow it down. What would you say you think the most challenging thing is? And on the flip side, what would you say is the most rewarding part of your work there?
I'm going to give you the same answer for both. The people.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Agreed
Because isn't that
completely.
truly
Yes.
for any of us? It's like it's
Oh, yes.
dealing with the people that are in our lives. And so they can be challenging. So they're having a bad day. They're having a bad week. They're having a bad year. I mean, they're taking it out on you because you're the first line person in the office and everything else. And so you're the one that answered the phone call, and immediately it's an irate tirade of whatever is going on, kind of thing. And other days they're on top of the world, and you're just like, oh, hey, they come in and they're like spreading the sunshine, and you're like, I get to be the beneficiary of all of their happiness and sunshine and everything else. I also get to see all their grandkids' pictures or their kids' big picture, or they're like, you're here for me to just be able to talk to, and that's when it comes down to it. A major part of our job is just to be the one the parents can come to and say, hey, I have this issue. And then we get them directed to the right person. It might be a discipline issue that needs to go to the administrator, or, certain different tasks of things like that. But we're that first contact. So they become our biggest challenge, our biggest reward as well, and everything. Seeing the kids that are like so excited because it's like you give them a Band-Aid, so they give you a hug. And it's rewarding in its own sense, dealing with those people, even on days where how many days are there that are just like, okay, I've got one parent yelling at me and I got another parent praising me up and down because they're like, thrilled that I was able to answer a very simple question for them or whatever. Wow, you're the most frustrating part of my job, and you're also the happiest part of my job. It's why I do what I do. So yeah, when it comes to the challenging and the rewarding, it's the people. So
Yeah, well said. Okay, so along those same lines, what do you think are some misconceptions that teachers and really honestly administrators have about the school office? Maybe as a part B to that or along the same lines, what are some things you wish that they knew from a secretarial perspective?
their expectation is that we know everything, right?
Of course you do.
It's like, okay. And at one point I feel like I did in my career. I'm like backing off to part-time and everything else. I'm like, I don't know anything. And I walk in the school office now and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I have no idea. I'm dealing with files and folders now. I'm not not so much everything else. And for some of that, I'm really good. I'm really glad to be not having to worry about everything anymore at this point. But at the same time, miss that too. And miss kind of being in that central hub and everything. So they kind of expect us to be that central hub, know everything. And we don't always. Most of the time, we at least know who we should be telling them to go see, even if it's not, we know the answer kind of thing. And sometimes we have to be careful I know the answer, but I'm not the one who should be telling you.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
Good thought.
it just is, I am not. So with all the duty splits and things like that, I know I don't know everything anymore. So very often I'm just returning them over to someone else. And so them just needing to be gracious with the fact that we don't know everything, all the time. But typically we can try to help them and everything else. And so the expectation is, I find I'm very blessed in my work environment. Our people are wonderful. God has blessed our school and our church with a fantastic staff over the years. And they are a joy to work with and everything. But it's nice to know that we can be ourselves too. So it's like, I'm having a bad day. Typically okay, I don't hide it well. But they are so gracious on those days and so wonderful to work with. And we give the same grace back. They're having a bad day. Kids are driving them crazy in the classroom kind of thing. And it's like, okay, well, come here. Tell me what's going on. And now, okay, it's between you and I and it's done, but here, let's pray about it quick before you go back to class. Or let's just, okay, what troubleshooting can we do to try and help that child or whatever. So that's always really, we don't always have all the answers. That's what they need to know, is we don't always have all the answers. So,
Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to keep walking down this path. This is really good. So we have heard Linda's story. We've also talked about the role of office personnel, the challenges, the rewards. We've also heard about some interesting misconceptions and things that maybe office personnel wish that teachers knew. One issue is that we are running out of time. So in part 2 of this episode, we're going to talk about the insights that Linda can give us on getting through those chaotic office moments. We're going to talk about having an office atmosphere that is positive, as well as ways that teachers and admins can support the school office. So while we may be signing off for part 1, please don't miss out on part 2. Educators, Linda has more to share with you. And school secretaries, there may just be something in there for you as well, so don't miss out. But for now, thank you for joining us today. I hope you were encouraged and inspired by what Linda shared, as I was. Remember to go to teachereditionpodcast.com to listen and to learn more about this podcast. Of course, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media. Now, it's time to go get back to your day. But it's not just any day. Every day in the classroom is your day to impact and inspire through God's power and through His grace working in you. Now go do what God has called you to do.